Hello and welcome to We the People. This past week, the national headlines have been of heartbreak. They have been of the frustration of the ordinary Indian citizen when he or she seeks health care, especially for their children at hospitals across the national capital. What we've seen are deaths from dengue caused because families have been shunted from hospital to hospital, with hospitals denying admission for the lack of hospital beds. Does this underline an endemic problem in our healthcare system? Or do the fault lines run deeper? Is this about a clash between the burden on the public healthcare system and private hospitals, which many say have become profiteering institutions that have, in a sense, walked away from their original first principles of what everybody became a doctor for? Let me put a cold heart statistic out that tells its own story of why there will be more children dying, because there will continue to be a shortage of hospital beds. If you want to reach a figure of 2 beds for every 1,000 people by 2025, then according to a report, this will need an additional 17.5 lakh beds. For this, an estimated investment of 370,000 crores. This is just for adding the hospital beds. That's the kind of money we're talking about. And that is so many more times than the annual health budget of India. These statistics don't mean anything to the families who've actually experienced loss. So before we actually introduce our panel, I want to actually hear from the latest tragedy that we have seen unfold. A young boy called Rishabh, 17-year-old, father's a security guard, takes him from hospital to hospital to hospital, and it's a familiar story. We are going to hear from his brother here, his father here. Himanshu, आपसे पूछूंगी, आपके छोटे या बड़े भाई थे ऋषभ?
ऋषभ is my small brother.
जी, छोटे भाई.
Yeah.
जी.
फर्स्ट टाइम जब हम उसको गवर्नमेंट हॉस्पिटल में लेके गए थे, लास्ट सैटरडे उसको फीवर हुआ था, तो हम थोड़ा घबरा गए थे. हम उसको वहाँ लेके गए, शादरा में स्वामी दयानंद हॉस्पिटल है. डॉक्टर ने नथिंग, मतलब उसने हमसे कुछ नहीं कहा और उन्होंने हमसे कहा कि कोई बात नहीं, आप इसको पैरासीटामोल दे दीजिए.
उन्होंने टेस्ट करके बोला कि पैरासीटामोल? नो टेस्ट वाज डन.
उन्होंने पैरासीटामोल दी, देन उन्होंने कुछ भी नहीं करा, ना उन्होंने कोई इंजेक्शन लगाया, ना कोई सीरीज लगाई. आफ्टर दैट फिर हम उसको थोड़ा घबरा गए. शाम के टाइम हमें लगा कि इसका फीवर 104 था उस टाइम, तो हम उसको लेके गए थे हॉस्पिटल, रेड क्रॉस हॉस्पिटल, रिशाद गार्डन. देन वी वर कंसल्ट विद डॉक्टर. तो डॉक्टर ने हमसे बोला कि इसकी मतलब रिपोर्ट टेस्ट होंगे. टेस्ट करा तो हमें पता चला कि बच्चे को डेंगू है.
तो अब ये दूसरे हॉस्पिटल पे आप पहुंच गए हैं. उस दूसरे हॉस्पिटल पे डॉक्टर्स ने क्या कहा?
कि इस बच्चे को आप यहाँ से ले जाइए, क्योंकि ऐसी फैसिलिटीज नहीं है. वी कांट प्रोवाइड द such kind of facilities for the children.
तो हमारे पास फैसिलिटीज नहीं है टू ट्रीट डेंगू.
या
अच्छा.
फिर हम उसको वहाँ लेके गए, गुप्ता स्पेशलिस्ट हॉस्पिटल. दिस हॉस्पिटल इज सिचुएटेड एट विहार.
ये आप प्राइवेट हॉस्पिटल पे आ गए. तो वो क्या बोले?
तो उन्होंने हमसे ये बोला कि इस बच्चे को नथिंग, मतलब उन्होंने हमसे कुछ नहीं कहा स्टार्टिंग में, बट आई एम टेलिंग यू फॉर एवरी डॉक्टर्स कि अगर कोई पेशेंट अगर किसी हॉस्पिटल में जाता है तो आप उसको 2:30 या 3 बजे या 4 बजे के बीच में नाइट के टाइम आप ये बोलते कि भाई आप इस बच्चे को यहाँ जी हम रेफर कर रहे हैं.
कितने बजे थे?
2:30
बजे रात की आपको बोला आप किसी और हॉस्पिटल ले जाइए. जी. और रीजन क्या दिया? ये तो मल्टी स्पेशलिस्ट हॉस्पिटल था, सुपर स्पेशलिस्ट हॉस्पिटल था. डॉक्टर
A.K. गुप्ता जी ने हमसे ये बोला था कि भाई आप जंबो पैक्स अरेंज कीजिए.
मतलब ब्लड के लिए अरेंज. ओके.
अब मैम हम तो किसी को जानते नहीं थे.
उन्होंने एडमिट किया ऋषभ को?
उन्होंने एडमिट किया. फिर रात को 2:30 बजे उस बच्चे को बोला कि इस बच्चे को यहाँ से ले जाइए, इसकी प्रॉब्लम जो बहुत क्रिटिकल है कंडीशन. फिर उन्होंने हमें रेफर करा 2 हॉस्पिटलों के लिए.
मैक्स में?
या वन मैक्स एंड अदर इज GTB.
तो आप मैक्स में गए?
या हम मैक्स में गए. फिर मैक्स में डॉक्टर A.K. गुप्ता जी ने हमसे ये कहा था कि हमने मैक्स के अंदर बात कर ली है, ICU के अंदर आपको बेड अवेलेबल मिलेगा, सब चीज़ आपको वहाँ फैसिलिटीज मिलेंगी. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल हमारा एक ही रीजन था कि हम अपने बच्चे को जंबो पैक दे सकें, क्योंकि हमारे पास अरेंज नहीं होता. उस बच्चे का जब ग्रुप पॉजिटिव, वो B पॉजिटिव था. फिर हम वहाँ से उसको ले जाने के बाद मैक्स में शिफ्ट करा. वहाँ पर मैंने 45,000 सबमिट करे.
पैसे की भी प्रॉब्लम हुई होगी?
जी. यू नो व्हाट, एज यू नो कि माय फादर इज अ एम्प्लॉय इन हाउस. तो
ही इज अ सिक्योरिटी गार्ड.
या ही इज अ सिक्योरिटी गार्ड माय फादर. सो जब हम वहाँ पहुंचे तो उन्होंने हमसे 45,000 डिपॉजिट करवाए. हमने वहाँ डिपॉजिट करे, बट आफ्टर सम टाइम डॉक्टर टोल्ड मी कि इस बच्चे को आप यहाँ से ले जाइए. क्यों?
मैक्स ने भी कहा कि यहाँ से ले जाइए.
या वी कांट प्रोवाइड द बेड्स इन द ICU रूम्स
की जगह ही नहीं है.
जी, वैशाली शिफ्ट कर दीजिए. फिर जब वहाँ से हम निकले
तो अब ये 5वें हॉस्पिटल पे हम पहुँच गए.
जब हम डॉक्टर ने हमसे बोला कि इस बच्चे को आप वहाँ ले जाइए, वहाँ पर किसी भी चीज़ की प्रॉब्लम नहीं होगी और वहाँ पर आईसीयू में बेड रूम अवेलेबल है।
ठीक है। तो
व्हेन आई वेंट इन द आईसीयू रूम, तो मैं अपने भाई के कपड़े चेंज कर रहा था, तो एक डॉक्टर ने दूसरे डॉक्टर से पूछा कि भाई इस पेशेंट को ऑक्सीजन की तो जरूरत नहीं है। तो डॉक्टर ने बोला कि नहीं। जब हम उसको पुष्पांजलि के अंदर लेके गए वो बच्चा बिल्कुल ठीक था। फिर मैंने वहाँ 15,000 डिपॉजिट करे। रियली आई वांट आस्क फॉर एवरी डॉक्टर, अगर कोई डेंगू का एक पेशेंट है तो उसको क्या मेडिसिन दी जाती है? एक पैरासीटामोल। जब वो बिलिंग आई तो उसका बिल 1,50,000 था। आई वाज शॉक्ड कि मतलब इतना अमाउंट, आई नो कि दिस इज अ प्राइवेट हॉस्पिटल, बट आई वाज शॉक्ड कि मतलब
5th हॉस्पिटल पे क्या होता है, एंड में जाके क्या होता है?
फिर इसको वेंटिलेटर में आईसीयू में शिफ्ट कर दिया और हमें वहाँ बिल्कुल भी नहीं जाने दिया। गार्ड से रिक्वेस्ट करते रहे, अगर कोई एक आईसीयू रूम है, एक टाइम तो मिल सकता है रिलेटिव अपने पेशेंट से। वो पूरे एक दिन उस हॉस्पिटल में रहा
जी।
और उन्होंने हमसे मॉर्निंग में 8:30 बजे उन्होंने हमसे कहा 9:30 बजे कि भाई इस बच्चा ये अभी 10-15 मिनट जी सकता है, आप इससे मिल सकते हैं। तो हम रोने लगे सब लोग वहाँ पर। हम घबरा गए थे कि वह हमारा भाई अब हमारे बीच नहीं रहा। तो उन डॉक्टरों ने हमसे ये बोला कि फिर दोबारा बोला कि नहीं इस बच्चे के अंदर भी जान है, बट हमें श्योर था कि वो बच्चा बिल्कुल ही उस टाइम था ही नहीं।
तो अभी ऋषभ वाज अलाइव और नॉट बाय नाउ?
आई डोंट नो अबाउट इट।
मतलब बताया ही नहीं आपको?
जी, हमें बताया नहीं था कि वो मतलब कि आईसीयू के अंदर वो उस टाइम है कि वो है भी नहीं। एक बात मैं और कहना चाहता हूँ कि जब हम उस पुष्पांजलि हॉस्पिटल में, जब हमें पता चला कि वो शाम के टाइम उन्होंने हमें इन्फॉर्म करा कि हिज बच्चा इज डेड, तो उस टाइम उस बच्चे की हमें डेड बॉडी वो नहीं दे रहे थे। उन्होंने हमसे 73,000 की डिमांड करी थी आफ्टर हिज डेड
बॉडी दे रही।
या हमने उनको 73,000 भी दिए। फिर हमने उनसे बोला कि सर वी मस्ट एम्बुलेंस, हमें एम्बुलेंस की ज़रूरत है, बट उन्होंने कहा कि एम्बुलेंस हम प्रोवाइड नहीं करेंगे, हमारे पास एम्बुलेंस नहीं है।
और सबसे आपको फ्रस्ट्रेटिंग चीज क्या लगी कि द हॉस्पिटल से हॉस्पिटल जब भागना पड़ा? गौतम, as somebody who, I mean, you're in, you know, they work with you. What is the question you want to raise to all the doctors?
He called me at around that time and started crying that can you give me 50,000 rupees? So I said, what has happened? He said that my son, he didn't say he has died at that time. So I said, we found Google, got the number, I got through to the ICU and I spoke to the doctor. He said, well, he's very critical. When I said that, can you give me your name? He put the phone down. Then I rang up the MS, Dr. Prashant, and I said that, can you please find out what is the condition of the patient? And they said, yes, we'll find out and let you know. No reply came back. Then I rang up again and I said, I want to speak to Dr. Prashant. They put the phone down. So this is the response of Max, and I can tell you that they are just in the process, they're only interested in the business and making money. They're not interested in the welfare of the patient. They don't give a damn, in my view. And I think this is also experience not only of a poor man like Ram Kishore, but other people also have said this about Max.
आप कुछ कहना चाहेंगे?
बोलना चाहिए था मेरे से
बच्चे के बारे में।
क्या बोलूं? मैं तो ये चाहता हूँ सबसे ज़्यादा जो मेरे बच्चे के बीच में बीचा है, किसी माँ के संग में और नहीं होना चाहिए इसने।
जो आपके साथ हुआ किसी माँ के संग ना भी
नहीं होना चाहिए।
हॉस्पिटल से हॉस्पिटल भागना पड़ा।
भागना, मेरे बच्चे की जान ना बच पाई।
बच्चे का क्या सपना था?
सपना बहुत अच्छा था उसका। मैं उससे कहता था तो मैं तो कोई पढ़ाऊंगा, जितना तू चाहे इतना पढ़ ले। पढ़ने में इतना तेज था, 10वीं के बोर्ड के पेपर लग रहे थे। बोलो पापा मैं कहीं नहीं जाऊँगा, मैं बेटे तो पढ़ ले जितना पढ़ा है। और पढ़ने में इतना तेज था कि मैं कहूँ ये मेरे बच्चा भी नहीं था उसके बराबर पढ़ने में।
यहाँ जो सब डॉक्टर बैठे हैं, आप उनसे क्या कहना चाहेंगे रामकिशोर भाई?
मैं तो ये चाहता हूँ सबके सामने, मेरे गैल में तो हंसता हुएगा। सबसे मेरी गुजारिश ये है कि सभी के संग में ऐसा ना हो। जहाँ भी आप कोई कुछ भी कारोबार करते हैं, किसी बच्चे के संग में ऐसा ना हो।
उस समय तो गुस्से के लिए भी जगह नहीं होती ना, बस ये होता है कि बच्चे को किसी तरह बचाओ।
वहाँ जब दूसरी हॉस्पिटल गाजियाबाद में जब हम हॉस्पिटल में लगे तो वहाँ बाउंसर भी खड़े थे, वो बोलने नहीं देते थे।
बाउंसर खड़े मतलब सिक्योरिटी गार्ड जो आपको कुछ नहीं कहने देते, कुछ ब्लॉक करके रखते थे।
हमने कि हमारे बच्चे का वेंटिलेटर मत लगाओ, जब हमारा बच्चा बोल रहा तो इसके वेंटिलेटर क्यों लगाया जाता? ऑक्सीजन की भी कोई जरूरत नहीं थी उसको।
It's actually very difficult. Rishabh has died just this week, and this is a family that's agreed to speak because they want to underscore what happened so that it doesn't happen to anybody else. We did give Max a chance, by the way, to be part of this program. They declined. I'm going to open this up for the doctors now. Let me start with you, Dr. Guleria. Is this about all hospitals? Is this in particular, you hear their employer, Gautam Soni, saying this is only about the hospitals who only look at the balance sheets, only look at the bottom line. But even when we look at, AIMS or we look at Safdarjung, you've seen horrific images. We've seen them all seen them for years. You have patients outside the trauma ward. They sit on the street. They're waiting for a bed. In Safdarjung, you have people sharing hospital beds. And then you have on the other spectrum, the private hospitals, where there's a perception that they've become more like hotels and hospitals.
Yeah, I think it's a very unfortunate story, and it's very unfortunate that now when we say that we are becoming an emerging market, that this is happening in the capital. And I think it's a fundamental question which I would need to probably ask everyone here. Is medicine a service or is it a business? Are we becoming doctors to provide service to humanity, or are we becoming doctors to make money? That's the fundamental question which we need to answer, and this has happened in the last one generation. 20, 30 years ago, doctors were highly respected. They worked as a service. They were willing to go to rural areas. They would see patients, say, 12 hours a day without bothering about things like food and such sort of pleasures. As we have become more privatized, as we have become more industrialized, I would say, private sector has opened up, corporate hospitals have come, and medicine has been one has started looking at it as a business model. Most hospitals are not run by doctors, they're run by people who look at business returns. And therefore the whole concept of medicine has changed.
So what I want to ask you is service and a profit mutually exclusive? Because there could be an argument, and I'm just going to take that to Dr. Arvind Lal, that there could be an argument that big hospitals also need those profits because they have better infrastructure, better machinery, better testing facilities, maybe better doctors.
You need to say what should that profit be. The profit can be sky's the limit. You could say that for a surgery which requires, say, only 10,000, you could charge 5 lakhs. There is no restriction on that.
So, Dr. Lal, I think Dr. Guleria gets to an interesting, and I think at the heart of the debate, what is medicine about? Is it about service, or is it a private enterprise looking at the maximum profit? The perception is that medicine is a business today.
I think it's a very long and debatable topic. Firstly, the private hospitals are there to stay. You can't just wish them away. I mean, I would personally like the government to give all the care possible, etc., etc. But that's not practical. Well, I would like to say that no hospital and no doctor, at least whom I know I've come across, can behave in a callous manner. Number two.
So many doctors behave in a callous manner, but that would probably cut across private and public, Dr. Guleria. I don't think that's specific to any one kind of...
No, that's true.
But, and in fairness to doctors, I will also make the argument that doctors are highly sort of overburdened as well. But that still doesn't address the philosophical question that when medicine becomes a profit-making enterprise, does that change your approach? किसी के body वापस देने के लिए 17 साल के लड़के की body वापस करने के लिए आप 70,000 रुपए दीजिए।
हाँ, नहीं बिल्कुल, वो तो मैं आपसे 100% सहमत हूँ कि ऐसा तो कोई कर ही नहीं सकता और
नहीं करना चाहिए। रोज होता है। ये
तो बिल्कुल गलत चीज हुई है, अगर हुई है तो इसमें तो कोई दो राय है ही नहीं। पर मैं आपको सिर्फ एक चीज बताना चाहता हूँ कि जो डॉक्टर्स हैं 95% जो डॉक्टर्स हैं बिल्कुल प्योर एथिकल हैं, जो बेचारे अपनी जान दे सकते हैं पेशेंट के लिए। 5% इधर उधर हो सकता है कि कोई जैसे 5 उंगलियां इकट्ठी नहीं होती, इट इज पॉसिबल। 1 हॉस्पिटल बेड इन अ प्राइवेट हॉस्पिटल लाइक अपोलो, फोर्टिस और मैक्स कॉस्ट अप्रॉक्सिमेटली 1 crore rupees.
Cost to 1 crore rupees.
Of creating a bed in a hospital these days, 1 crore. Delhi administration or a government hospital might be able to do it for 25 lakhs or 50 lakhs. Now this is really big money, and the private hospitals have been fighting for it, for the government that give us some kind of a subsidy like you gave to the IT industry, etc. Dr. Pratap Reddy has been saying everywhere that how about giving us at least land at some subsidized cost.
But land is subsidized. Land is subsidized for hospitals, Dr. Lal. It is subsidized.
No, not now.
Not now, but there have been hospitals in the past.
In the past, everything was subsidized. Now the present position is all the hospital lands, pathology lab lands, they are all auctioned by the DDA. Open auction.
But why would you want the government to subsidize lands in hospitals that make so much money?
No, it's a myth that the hospitals are making money. The hospital starts making money after the 7th year. Sorry?
Dr. Chatterjee, in Apollo's case also, you're in court. In fact, Lalit Bhasin is here. He's been a senior lawyer representing a number of the private hospitals. But the argument has in fact been precisely this, that the land was given away at kind of throwaway prices to a hospital like Apollo, and there is still a fight over reserving a number of beds for poor patients.
That's true. What the agreement was, and that has to be obviously followed, is maybe is a judicial matter and between the government and the hospital.
I mean, Apollo got land at a throwaway cost.
It is. It's a fact. There's no doubt about that.
But to Dr. Guleria's question, you know, Dr. Lal is saying that, you know, the bed costs about 1 crore. The government should come in with subsidies. You know, then why shouldn't AIIMS and other public health get much more subsidies? Because the burden of healthcare to the poor is still falling on the public health system.
All these government hospitals anyway get a lot of subsidy. They're almost free hospitals. Private hospitals, they will have to maintain certain standards. They will have to maintain an infrastructure. They will have to do a lot of investigations. When I left Maulana Azad Medical College to join Apollo Hospital, I thought that over there to get an investigation done and to treat was much more difficult for me. Maulana Azad is a very good medical college in this city. When I left that place, I thought that I left a very good place. But when I joined Apollo, I thought that at the level at which I left the patients over there, because of lack of investigation facilities, I thought that all these things could be done at Apollo at a much earlier date. Obviously, they were charging money, but life is very important, and people who could afford at that time, we thought that I could diagnose a patient and treat a patient much earlier than what I was able to do at Maulana Azad.
But I'm coming to the larger point, because, you know, if I'm right about the Apollo details, and this could apply, Dr. Lal, to a number of other hospitals, we're not singling, it's not about any one hospital. Sure. There were 15 acres of land leased to Apollo at 1 rupee for 30 years, right? So when you say the government should come in with more subsidies, that seems very odd.
May I intervene at this stage, please?
Yes, Mr. Masin.
There is a, you see, misperception about Apollo and all that. Factually, if I may tell you, that it is like a bogey, you know, being raised, that it is free land being given to Apollo. It was a quid pro quo. This is the only hospital, possibly in India, which is a joint sector undertaking. Delhi government is a party to it. Delhi government has earned crores of rupees by way of dividend. And what happened was that this 1 rupee was the lease rental for the land, as against 1 rupee charged by the Apollo group of hotels for managing the hotel, which otherwise would have cost about crores of rupees to the hospital to give to Apollo to manage the hospital. Therefore, it was like an arrangement. You pay 1 rupee lease rental, we will pay you 1 rupee for the total management. And then the issue which arose, which is in the court, is not with regard to free treatment. Free treatment is being provided to all those who come, you see, to the Apollo, except the fact, the dispute which is now pending, whether they are entitled to something which the hospital does not produce, like the free medicines and free medical consumables.
And you mean hospital, not hotel, which is a Freudian slip, because many people may say that hospitals have become hotels. But the point is, sir, it is not about one hospital. This story is about Max. What we're asking you is about Polo. Tomorrow it could be Fortis. आप लोग क्या कहना चाहेंगे? डॉक्टर साहब जो बैठे हैं, हिमांशु?
मैम, मैं तो एक ही चीज़ कहना चाहता हूँ कि मतलब कोई भी पेशेंट अगर किसी हॉस्पिटल में जा रहा है तो उसको आप सही से उसको टेक ओवर कीजिए, सही से उसकी केयर कीजिए।
पर जब वो कहते हैं हमारे पास बिस्तरा नहीं है,
तो मैम वो उनकी मैनेजमेंट की कमी है। The lack of management of a hospital.
Very well, sir.
Poonam, what is at the heart of this debate?
I believe we have not invested enough in our public sector. That's why poor people have to go to the private sector, and the story that we've heard is not unexpected. Private sector today is only profit motivated.
So when Dr. Arvind Lal says that actually it costs the hospital 1 crore per bed.
Yeah, so public, if it is less, it doesn't matter, but we have decreased budgets, you know, by 20% in the country this year.
Because they argued that the states have been given more revenue and the states should look...
No, but the states have been given more revenue, not for health. They've been given overall, and they're not going to invest in health. So I think the heart of the matter is we need to invest more in public health. We need to create more beds. What we are hearing of the private sector is not very good news. But having said that, we do need to strengthen the private sector, but by not investing in them and giving them subsidies, sir, we need the Clinical Establishment Act. We need greater regulation in the private sector so that they serve the poor people.
You know, Dr. Guleria, at this moment, you know, this whole medical crisis in the national capital has erupted at a time when the government actually wants doctors who go abroad to study. They're saying, we're not going to give the no objection certificates. You come back, you do your duty. Can duty be mandated? You know, to argue now from the reverse argument. Are you saying Dr. Chatterjee and Dr. Arvind Lal spend any fewer hours than you working?
No, definitely not. Duty can be mandated. But what is the core question also is the infrastructure that needs to be developed. There is very little infrastructure which is developed, even at a primary level. There seems to be a move from health becoming a public responsibility to it becoming more of a private responsibility. That's why I raised the fundamental question. Do we expect our health system to be run as a public facility
Service?
where the government will put in more money, provide more beds, improve the infrastructure? You don't need 1 crore for a bed, because you don't need to have a bed which has got marble floor, which has a lot of ICUs or a fountain at the reception, things like that.
So you're disagreeing with Dr. Arvind Lal's estimate that you actually need 1 crore to
1 crore is in a corporate hospital where they have a lot of other investments. Where it
So what's a corporate hospital? I've never heard of this term before. A corporate hospital.
Corporate hospital is something
Should a hospital
everyone
be a corporate?
It should not. Why should we equate a hospital with a hotel-like environment?
Let me put it this way, that the corporate hospital is a misnomer. It's like when two doctors are practicing together, they are in partnership. With 3 or 4 doctors, they become a private limited. And if they take money from somebody else, etc., you come under the corporate law. All I am saying is 100% carelessness cannot be agreed upon here.
The perception that callousness is more likely to happen if your interest is the profit at the end.
No, I 100% disagree here.
Why?
The moment the patient has been brought in, etc., no doctor, at least whom I know in a so-called corporate hospital, is going to first say that you give me the money first and
It
go away.
happens everywhere, sir. It happens. It's the not just norm. It happens 100%.
I just give one example.
One second. Please ask them that the boy was admitted.
हिमांशु क्या आपसे पहले बोला क्या था कि आप पैसे दीजिए और उसी के बाद एडमिशन होगा?
Sir, I'm telling you seriously, first time जब हम उसको मैक्स के अंदर लेके गए थे, उन्होंने 15,000 हमसे सबमिट करवाए थे, बाद एडमिशन फॉर्म उसका पहले फिलिप किया गया था, बाद में उसे एडमिट किया गया था ICU के अंदर.
See, there is a case.
You know, you have to know, as somebody who has been to hospital after hospital, you have to, even if you have money, you have to know somebody to get service. You have to pull rank, you have to pull influence, you have to find friends, you have to befriend doctors. I'm not questioning the integrity of, I've seen Dr. Chatterjee, I've seen many other doctors, they work from morning to night. But there's a perception among the citizenry that there is no empathy from doctors.
You see, let us not make it into a
public versus private.
Government versus private hospital, because one fundamental thing I think we are ignoring. When our constitution was framed in 1950, there is a specific article, Article 47, which says that health care is the obligation and duty of the state. In 1950, we didn't have...
That's a good point. Let me just get Rama and Shailaja, and then I want to actually raise this very important point that when we ask private hospitals to step up to the plate, are we asking them to do what the state has failed to do? Rama?
I think the specific case of Rishabh is really criminal medical negligence, and I don't think we can get away from it, because if you're being denied care, taking money for the care, not sharing with the patient, the parents, what the nature of the problem is, and this child has died. It's very, very important for us to take to task hospitals like Max and Fortis, because they are representing the large private sector. And what is the culture, what is the behavior?
But this could have also happened, and we're going to hear from a family. There are families who also go to Safdarjung, and they also go to AIMS, and they also go to RMNL and LNJP, and they're turned away from there also. So are we being simplistic here by making this only about private hospitals?
It's not a public-private, dichotomized debate. I think the public sector has been weakened, and it has been weakened with underinvestment. The issue that Dr. Guleria raised, we are only looking at the hospital sector. What is happening to primary care and secondary care in urban areas? It's decimated pretty much. And we talked a lot about the National Urban Health Mission. Nothing has happened. So why are people reaching the hospital sector is a very important question for an issue like dengue, certainly.
Shailaja, actually, ideally, if you had primary health care more easily, if you had a neighborhood clinic, if you had a GP, dengue patients should not be in hospital to start with. So the fact that you reach this crisis means that your absolutely basic layer of healthcare infrastructure, Shailaja, is missing. Isn't that a failure of the state?
Number one, you are right. You're absolutely right. there is no primary health care, whether in urban areas or rural areas, except in states which are well administered. We can go into which those states are later. It is definitely the responsibility, constitutionally, morally, ethically, on all planes, to give public health care by the public sector. Public health means malaria, leprosy, dengue, epidemics, outbreaks, insecticides, beds, all those things. Beds means beds for these kinds of public health problems cannot be put on the shoulders of the private sector. However, when there is a public health emergency, when there is an epidemic, then there's an outbreak which can have repercussions like people die.
Then private hospitals have to step up to the plate.
You can enjoin them, but you have to, and I've done it, Dr. Lal will bear it out. When I was health secretary in Delhi government, there was no such requirement then. We called the hospitals. We said, this is an epidemic situation. Will you help us? This is the protocol to be followed. This is how RML will send to so-and-so. It was linked. Now, number one, that networking process with understanding of who you're networked with. Here, the network is for blood components. If a hospital like Apollo has a blood banking facility, they should become the tertiary apex sentinel center for giving this. Number two, what I want to say is, you're absolutely right. Most of the cases of dengue need observation.
There are no neighborhood clinics. People today go to hospitals for everything.
Because if you do not have investment in public health, this will go haywire. It has already gone haywire.
I just want to, Dr. Lal, one thing I want to ask you as a pathologist. We also had the government stepping in and mandating the cost at which a dengue blood test should happen. It's been mandated at 600 rupees. Now, is this something the private labs should have offered themselves?
We can sit down with the government in an non kind of an emergency atmosphere and explain what it costs us. Right now we are not even questioning the government, except for the fact that out of 13,890 total patients registered with us yesterday, 7,700 were only for platelets. Now see what has happened. The people are coming to us because now platelet count has been brought down to a commodity. And then the patient says, अच्छा यहाँ थोड़ा कम आया है, तो दूसरी लैब में जाके मैं टेस्ट कराता हूँ, तीसरी में जाके कराता हूँ. And let me tell you, I have the statistics that out of this only 3% were less than 57,000, in which Dr. Guleria would probably admit the patient. That's it.
Dr.
Guleria? This is exactly what we were trying to say. When we come to dengue, which is smaller part of the bigger issue, majority or more than 90% of dengue patients don't need to be admitted. But
no, I agree. But
there's such a lot of panic.
They don't even get the initial treatment.
Yes. So what we need is, like we said, a good primary health center where you have a doctor who can explain to them. That will also decongest the hospitals.
In the area, most doctors do not have the time to talk to their patients.
Yeah. So then
that most doctors. There are many honorable exceptions, and I'm lucky to know some of them. The point is,
but that
most
again
people,
addresses the basic issue.
And I'm seeing a lot of hands go up. Can I just hear from Dinesh? Dinesh lost both his children. To dengue. One in 2010 and one just this past week. Dinesh ji, दोनों बच्चे आपके, लड़का लड़की, क्या नाम था उनके?
एक का नाम था अंकित, एक का नाम था मेनका.
और उम्र क्या थी?
11 साल दोनों की.
और 2010 में
लड़के की मौत हो गई और 18 तारीख को लड़के की.
क्या हुआ? पहले लड़के के साथ आप कितने हॉस्पिटल से हॉस्पिटल गए?
सर, मैं मदन मोहन हॉस्पिटल मालवीय नगर में सरकारी हॉस्पिटल है, मैं वहाँ पे लेकर गया शाम को. तो इन्होंने एक टैबलेट दी, बोला आप घर लेकर जाइए इसे, ठीक है लड़का. तो मैं वहाँ से लेकर चला आया. फिर सुबह फिर उसकी तबीयत बहुत ज़्यादा ख़राब होने लग गई. उसके पेट में दर्द होना शुरू हो गया. तो मैं लेकर फिर गया, फिर एक गोली दी और फिर भेज दिया. फिर मैं लेकर आया, फिर उन्होंने शाम को एडमिट कर लिया. उन्होंने बहुत कहने सुनने के बाद, मतलब हाथ पैर जोड़ने के बाद उन्होंने बहुत एडमिट कर लिया. एडमिट करने के बाद उन्होंने फिर इलाज करते रहे. फिर उन्होंने बोला हमारे बस की नहीं है, आप इसको और कहीं लेकर जाओ. तो हम सफदरगंज लेकर गए.
ये अंकित की बात?
हाँ जी, अंकित की बात कर रहा हूँ. सफदरगंज में कम से कम मेरा 2.5 घंटा बर्बाद किया उन्होंने. डॉक्टरों ने बहुत हाथ पैर जोड़े, बहुत उनसे मिन्नतें की मैंने डॉक्टरों के साथ. नहीं, वो फिर भी नहीं सुनते थे. मेरा बच्चा तड़पता रहा, फिर भी डॉक्टर लोग वो देखते रहे. फिर मेरा एक डॉक्टर साहब है उन जानने वाले, उनसे मैंने बहुत रिक्वेस्ट की, उन्होंने भर्ती करवाया. उसको भर्ती करवाने के बाद फिर इसकी देखभाल करी इन्होंने। ठीक है, ये लड़का है जी,
ये अंकित है।
हाँ जी।
तस्वीर ही बची अब, स्कूल यूनिफॉर्म में है शायद
जी।
तो सफदरजंग में,
सफदरजंग में फिर उन्होंने मेरा बच्चा बिल्कुल तड़पता रहा सर, मगर वो कोई भी बोलता रहता था। मैं
रात में खत्म हो गया 9 बजे तड़का, कुछ नहीं किया डॉक्टर ने, मेरे बच्चे के पास कुछ नहीं किया, हाथ पैर मेरे बच्चे जोड़ रहे थे, नहीं किया कुछ नहीं डॉक्टर ने।
और इस साल क्या हुआ?
इस साल मेनका को सर मैं संजीवनी हॉस्पिटल है वो सरिता विहार के पास, वहाँ पे है, तो मैं डॉक्टरों के पास ले गया। पहले ही इन्होंने बोला कि मेरे 30,000 रुपये जमा कर दीजिए, एडमिट करते हैं बच्चे को। हमने 30,000 रुपये जमा करे।
आप क्या करते हैं?
मैडम प्लम्बर का काम करता हूँ। तो उन्होंने बोला आपकी बच्ची ठीक हो जाएगी, इसकी कोई टेंशन मत रखिए, आप बेफिक्र रहिए।
इस बारी प्राइवेट हॉस्पिटल?
हाँ जी, प्राइवेट हॉस्पिटल में था। तो फिर हम करते रहे। फिर सुबह हुई तो प्लेटेस मंगाई इन्होंने। प्लेटेस नहीं मैडम, रात को ही मंगाया। रात को हमने 1 घंटे के अंदर अरेंज कर दिया प्लेटेस। फिर उसके बाद इन्होंने चढ़ाया। फिर इन्होंने बोला कि अब हमारे बस की नहीं है, आप और किसी हॉस्पिटल में लेकर जाइए इसे। तो हमने उसी टाइम होली फैमिली में लेकर गए। 2-2.5 घंटे उन्होंने बर्बाद किए। बहुत हाथ पैर जोड़ने के बाद उन्होंने भर्ती तो ले लिया, फिर ट्रीटमेंट चलता रहा। इन्होंने कहा अब भगवान भरोसे आप रहने दीजिए।
मेरे बच्चे हाथ पैर जोड़ रहे थे, डॉक्टर मैं अपने घर बेच दूंगा, मेरा बच्चा बचा लो। कोई बचाने का कहीं नहीं किया मेरे को डॉक्टर, मेरे बच्चों को दोनों को कोई सहारा नहीं दिया।
और उस समय सबसे मुश्किल बात क्या लगी कि हॉस्पिटल से हॉस्पिटल, आपको तो 2 बार ही ये हुआ, मतलब मैं तो सोच भी नहीं सकती कि वो दर्द किस तरह का होगा।
मेरे बच्चे के कोई ना, मेरे माँ भी नहीं थी, मैं इतने बड़े बच्चे को दोनों पाली थी अपने हाथ।
आप दादी है उनकी?
माँ भी नहीं थी, मैं अपने हाथ से पाली हूँ।
ये तस्वीर
हाँ,
आप लेके आए हैं?
इसकी मदर नहीं है।
मदर नहीं है तो आपकी माँ ने पाला?
हाँ जी।
आपने सरकारी अस्पताल पिछली बारी ट्राई किया?
हाँ जी।
उसमें अंकित नहीं बच पाया। इस बारी
मैंने कहा प्राइवेट में करता हूँ, तो प्राइवेट में भी वही रवैया
मेरा बच्चा इतना गंभीर नहीं था, पैर से आया था, पैर से गया था, इतना गंभीर नहीं था, बच्चा बोल रहा था।
सर मैं कहता हूँ डॉक्टर लोग, मैं ये जिस हिसाब से मैं गुजरा था वहाँ पे हम लोगों को ना, गरीब इंसान को तो खास तौर से गरीब इंसान को तो ये कुछ नहीं समझते हैं सर। मैं अपनी स्थिति बता रहा हूँ, बाकी लोगों को किसी को बुरा लगे उसके लिए माफ़ी चाहता हूँ
कि गरीब इंसान की कोई
परवाह नहीं करता। वहाँ पे मैं इस स्थिति से मैंने अपना घर तलक, मैंने कहा डॉक्टर साहब मेरा घर तलक भेज देना, ले लो, मेरे बच्चे को किसी भी हालत में बचा लो, मगर इन्होंने कहा नहीं अब मेरे बस की नहीं है, मेरे भगवान भरोसे है।
डॉक्टर गुलेरिया, it covers the canvas from public to private. It covers the canvas. And he's right. It's the poor. Because the rest of us will find somebody we know, we will find some money, we will find some connections.
90,000 रुपए मेरे से लिया गया है होली फैमिली में।
90,000?
हाँ जी।
First, I don't understand how a dengue treatment costs 90,000 rupees.
It doesn't. That's what I'm saying. Most patients of dengue don't require any treatment. They just need fluids and paracetamol and more of reassurance and close monitoring. But you know, again, it's an unfortunate story because it highlights the fact that we are really not involved.
50%. Sorry, Dr. Guleria. 50% is the cost of the platelet transfusion. 50%.
No, but majority of patients don't require a platelet transfusion.
Exactly.
As a matter of fact, if you look at data from Thailand, they've shown that less than 2 to 5% of dengue patients actually need platelets.
But you know, one of the reasons I got both of these families is because I wanted to illustrate that this is actually endemic. Rama and Dr. Chatri, let me get you in. We are angrier with private hospitals because there is still remains a discomfort with medicine being a profit-oriented profession. I think that's a natural sort of reaction. But this happens when we've seen the images of 2 patients to a bed in Safdarjung, and that's still better than the people who line up outside All India Medical Institute every day for weeks, for months awaiting a hospital bed. Who do we blame?
See, what I'm trying to see is, it's very unfortunate that we had to lose a young life.
Yeah.
Now, if I have to see medically, this boy, when he went to he in all hospitals, he paid the money. They asked for it, he paid it. Okay.
Yeah.
So the treatment was started. It is very difficult sometimes on day 1, day 2 to say that which dengue patient is not going to do well. On day 1, if a patient comes who is stable and who has a reasonably good platelet count, who is not vomiting, who is not dehydrated, you are not admitting those patients. You obviously are sending them home with an advice. I would agree that in a public sector or maybe in a private sector these days where more number of patients are coming, doctors have less time maybe to speak with people. But I would, in all cases, if I see that the first patient when it was referred from Safdarjung Hospital had a platelet count of 1,80,000, was hydrated well.
So you're saying doctors can't be soothsayers. You can't predict. But sir,
on day 1, day 2, it's sometimes difficult to predict.
This is this is a situation where in the next 48 hours they die, or the next
hemorrhagic dengue fever. A hemorrhagic dengue fever is a crisis which doctors will not be able to manage.
So, sir, I would say what we're really not understanding is the sheer frustration of walking into a hospital and have it be amongst the most hostile environments. If you don't know someone, if you don't have money, Rama, it can be an unfriendly, hostile environment.
And I think this issue covers both public and private hospitals today.
Yes,
it does.
So if you are upper middle class, if you have all the connections, you will use those connections to get admission, whether it is in an AIMS or in a Max hospital.
Yeah.
But the very important difference is that technically a public hospital can never turn away patients. They may say they may tell you that we don't have enough beds. They may not say it very nicely to you.
Yeah.
But in a private hospital, they can just say, sorry, we can't treat you. You don't have the money.
Although the Supreme Court judgment says a private hospital cannot turn patients.
Exactly.
Also, they don't
Those are
lose
accident
so much
cases.
money.
Those are
Accident cases.
But
accident.
also
only accident
Yes,
cases.
only accident cases.
So you mean as a dengue patient, if I walk into a private hospital, by law the hospital can turn me away?
By law, yes, but generally they should not.
But
They
that's
should evolve a
exactly
code of
why I'm
conduct.
saying
Poonam,
we
I'm
need-
taking questions. If you have questions, raise your
That's
hand, Poonam.
exactly why I'm saying we need greater regulation. We need a clinical establishment act for the private sector. And as far as the public sector is concerned, Barkha, at least they don't go into debt. He escaped selling his house, but he lost a lot of money.
Yeah.
And the treatment wasn't done. He lost his
more
son
regulations are
and
not
he
the
lost
answer.
his money.
More regulations are not the answer.
No, 1 minute.
What-
There is, one second. I want to say that the private sector is totally unregulated, and that's not true for America, England, any other country.
What Dr. Devi Shetty, a very eminent person, he's written today morning only, a very alarming situation. He says that most of the government hospitals and 50% of private hospitals will close down in next 5 years. Why? Because you don't have good nurses, you see.
Yeah.
We are falling short of nurses.
Yeah.
2.4 million nurses we are short of.
Yeah.
And this is what he says. I would seek your permission just to
Yeah.
read 2 lines out of this. And this connects with the dengue cases. He says 2 children dying in Delhi due to dengue has projected the shortage of beds as the primary problem. He said, the truth is that it is not shortage of beds, but a shortage of critical care nurses.
I agree.
That has created the crisis.
Sir. But then is the answer, Dr. Guleria, is the answer to say if doctors go abroad, we will not give them they have to come back.
No,
we will not give no objection certificates.
So we're now looking at a broader question which also involves medical education.
Yeah.
We have also reached a stage where education has also become privatized.
Exactly.
Yes.
We need to have more government
And
colleges.
let's not forget Vyapam. But anyway,
So now, unless we say there's a shortage of doctors, shortage of nurses, but over the last 20 years, we have done nothing to anticipate this shortage and build our infrastructure accordingly.
But Shailaja, on this point that Poonam is saying the private sector is unregulated, Lalit Hasin is saying you don't need more regulation.
You do, and there is a law.
Private or public SOPs have to be in place.
Has to, and you have to adopt it at a state level. Failure of health administration and health management.
Yes,
and
agreed.
that brings in everything. Politicians, health administrators mostly don't just fire at doctors and hospitals. Whole of Southeast Asia has dengue. They spend so much time, money, energy on preventive care. Why are the vectors allowed to breed? Even today, we are not doing anything about it.
Yeah, exactly. It is systemic, but the systemic issues have thrown up some of the unresolved issues in the medical fraternity. I need to make a few questions and we'll take last comment.
Since there is outbreak of dengue regularly since 1996 in Delhi, why there are not such measures implemented by this time that it should be prevented before the outbreak?
The problem is not the present doctors. The problem is the absent required doctors in the healthcare system. और बाद में सभी problems हम बोलते हैं कि relate कर लेते हैं doctors से जो present है, पर उनकी problems नहीं है. असल में absent doctors.
How many of you are studying to be doctors here? So a lot of you are. Do you agree with this government proposal that you should come back and serve your country?
I seriously don't agree with this proposition that doctors should come back. They should have a right to study for their own. They should build themselves and then they can come back.
How many of you who are doctors would work in a public hospital? That's just 1 minute. 2 hands going up. 2 hands, and I'll just come to you. And how many of you would like to work in a private hospital? Please keep your hands up. So that's the majority, right? Why private over public?
For a very simple reason that everybody is ready to blame the doctor. If I am a doctor, I'm serving in a public hospital, everybody is ready to blame me. If I am a senior resident, 100 people are lining outside my cabin and people start shouting at a particular point कि हम 3 घंटे से खड़े हैं, हम 4 घंटे से खड़े हैं. I go out and I regulate the crowd. I'm not supposed to do that. I'm supposed to see the patients. So I would rather not go into the system. I can treat patients better, like Sir said, being in a...
Dr. Guleri, how do you strengthen the public healthcare system when after your generation, you may not be able to draw the best minds to it?
I am very worried about the next generation. Not only that, because medical education itself has gone into a real disarray. Current generation, we are not producing enough good teachers to teach people to become good doctors, to have that empathy that you keep talking about. Now the other issue is we need to invest more. We really need to look at public health in terms of what we can do, what is the responsibility of the state.
It's 1.2% of GDP right now, which is absolutely abysmal. Poonam, you want to come in there?
So basically, you are making a very strong case, young man, for us to invest in the public health system. And in urban health, there is no infrastructure, and it took 5 years for the Planning Commission to announce the Urban Health Mission. Barkha, we don't have money. We are going to ADB to get a loan for this country because the government has not allocated any money. So how will you create the infrastructure in the sector? But on the other hand, people go to the private sector because they don't get services. But 69% of the expenditures, which is in the private sector, people... that is responsible for huge number of poverty numbers going up because people go indebted. So Barkha, everything that is being said here except Mr. Lal, who's shocked me by saying private sector, Dr. Lal has said private sector needs more investment. There is a need for not just investment but planning.
I'll allow Arvind Lal to come in on that.
What I meant to say was that it is 1 crore per bed in a good hospital. And they take 7 years, madam, to break even. That's what I'm saying.
So the entire private sector or any business takes that. Why should we make exception?
But now 1.2% of our GDP is spent by the government on healthcare, which has gone down. And Montek Singh Ahluwalia said that we are going to jack it up to 2.5%. We don't even see it happening.
Never happened.
No, nobody wants to talk about it. And the biggest targets are the private people.
No, but we are all sitting here and saying we should increase.
But they are saying that the investment needs to go to the public system and not to the private system. Exactly. That's where the dispute is. That's where the dispute is.
It has to be a hybrid system in India.
Okay.
You cannot bank on one.
Rama, last thoughts as we start wrapping up. Rama.
The administration and the political class are complicit in this. You can't just blame the doctors. To me, the question is the foreign medical graduates are a very small proportion. There's a very large private sector which is unaccountable.
I agree.
With Dr. Guleria is saying.
We have gone through this blame game, the public blaming the private blaming the public. So the fact is we need something that is instantaneous. Social media, we can use the social media rather than going on that profit basis.
To address the panic, you're saying, but
I think it's very interesting to know that, young doctors don't want to go to the public sector because they don't have the infrastructure, while the private sector, when you go in, you're blamed for things that apparently other doctors are doing, turning away patients. So why is there no accountability for those doctors who are actually doing it? Why does the entire doctor community have to suffer because of these few doctors who are responsible for all of this, and how do we bring them to the limelight?
Dr. Lal, how do we address this crisis? Because it is a crisis and we only look at it when there's an outbreak such as dengue. I mean, we never have these shows when there's encephalitis which kills hundreds of lives in rural India. So there's a class bias even in the media attention, and the entire health system is defined by a class bias. And those of us who have money relatively have to be lucky that we are not the nation Ram Kishore, because we can get medical treatment. And that is the truth, sir, of private hospitals.
It has to be a national effort. Don't you forget that we have conquered polio, we
Yeah.
conquered smallpox.
Yeah.
So we can definitely conquer dengue if we want it. It cannot be an urgent emergency situation, all these things being discussed. When the dengue fever goes off, Dr. Guleria, me, Suranjit and Delhi administration can sit down together, form what you are saying, SOPs, etc. At what level you must admit the patient and at what level you must tell the patient to go away.
Dr. Chatterjee, last thoughts.
If we improve the infrastructure, all this blame game that is going on will all disappear. See, if you have more number of doctors, if you have more number of beds, the care and everything would improve. So it basically boils down to the fact that improve the infrastructure, everything will improve.
Medical science has always showed us darker faces, right from hospitals to patients and even to entrance examinations. When OMR sheets of an aspirant can be changed, then what not can be changed? All politicians, the corporate leaders, everybody, you know, it's money what speaks. You know, when I'm aspiring for MP PMT or AI PMT or AIMS or anything else, and if I'm capable enough, but my father doesn't have a crore so that he can buy a seat for me through Vyapam, then what such medical sciences students are doing?
And capitation colleges are what used to be Dr. Guleria considered infra-drug now is a perfectly acceptable thing.
Yeah, now capitation, they have an option.
So before there's a shortage of hospital beds, there's actually a
goes,
shortage of medical education.
An MD seat goes for 2 or 3 crores.
Anyway, last thoughts, Dr. Guleria.
So, you know, 2 issues are there. One is the acute management, and I think we need to have an outbreak management plan. We see this every year. We can have hospitals which are taken up and which we can increase the infrastructure immediately. And this should have happened 3 or 4 months ago before the monsoon came in terms of how having blood banks.
It's farcical actually.
And the second
that
issue
we can eradicate polio, but we can't combat dengue. I mean,
and one second issue is how can we improve healthcare in general? That is actually something which we need the administrators, the politicians, all to realize that health is as important as other issues on which elections are fought.
I'm just going to give the last words to our 2 families here. Dinesh ji, आखिर में आपने कहा गरीब के लिए कोई जगह नहीं है. आप सब ये जो डॉक्टर ये प्रोग्राम में बैठे हैं, जो लोग सुन रहे हैं, अंकित और मेनका की मेमोरी में आप क्या बोलना चाहेंगे? अपने बच्चों की याददाश्त में क्या बोलना चाहेंगे?
मैं ये कहना चाहता हूँ, जैसे भी हो, अब मेरे साथ तो हो गया है, मगर मेरे जैसे और किसी गरीब के साथ ना हो. जो भी हमारे छोटे गरीब भाई बंधु हैं, उनके काम आइए, आपके घर में ऐसा ठीक ठाक रहे, ऐसा कीजिए.
And I think that sums it up. It's actually quite a simple emotion. Let this not happen to anybody else. Doctors are not gods. All lives cannot be saved. But people should not die from the lack of a hospital bed, from the lack of a doctor to address them. And of course, while we look at private and public, the primary responsibility remains of a state, of the Indian state and the health administration that has absolutely failed its citizenry. And when in this country will something like Obamacare, will healthcare become a voting issue? I think that's the election we have to look forward to. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us on Video.